Frustration is mounting at the United Nations Security Council. Members convened an emergency meeting Sunday to deal with the collapse of the ceasefire in Syria and with the intensified fighting in Aleppo. CCTV's Li-Ling Tan is joining us from the UN in New York. And Li-Ling, what do we know now?
Hey there, Susan. Here at the UN, another day, another emergency meeting on Syria, and still Aleppo burns. As you said, fighting is intensifying in eastern Aleppo, and civilians continue to pay the highest price. And here, political will within the UN's most powerful committee, the Security Council, isn't translating to action on the ground. As eastern Aleppo came under heavy bombardment in what may be one of the worst weeks in the Syrian conflict, the UN Syria envoy delivered an impassioned plea to the Security Council to resume the cessation of hostilities, or COH.
Please, develop a common course of action to enforce a cessation of hostilities in Syria. I am still convinced that we can turn the course of events. We have proven this more than once before. We have come a long way to date to not allow the small but tangible achievements of the COH to be buried under the dust of Aleppo's rubble.
The cessation of hostilities brokered by the US and Russia went into effect on September 12th and then collapsed a week later after the destruction of a UN aid convoy. Washington blames Russia and the Syrian government for that attack, and Moscow blames the US and opposition rebels. The US and its Western allies want Russia and Syrian forces to stop targeting rebel groups. Russia says that's the difference between opposition rebels and terrorists.
We don't have to order someone to do anything unilaterally. But we need to see we're talking about a sincere desire to separate those people who are working with the American coalition from Jabhat al-Nusra.
Russia would have this council live in upside-down land, where bombing first responders, cutting off humanitarian aid, and supporting a murderous regime. What Russia is sponsoring and doing is not counterterrorism, it is barbarism.
As accusations continue to fly, China tried to steer the meeting back to a key area of concern.
反恐是解决叙利亚问题的重要组成部分。
Counterterrorism is a very important component of the solution to the Syrian question. The Syrian conflict has led to the rise and spread of terrorism. Without rooting out terrorism, there will be no peace for the Syrian people.
The UN's Syria envoy said that intensified aerial bombardment of heavily urbanized areas have left 275,000 Syrians in eastern Aleppo without enough fuel, food and water, and strikes against first responders means that more people who are injured have less chances to survive. Susan?
Li-Ling, was there any outcome at all from the emergency meeting?
Well, no, there was no outcome, nor was one really expected. This emergency meeting was more about getting the US and Russia back in here to try and overcome their differences in order to get this ceasefire back on track. And also, this was an opportunity for the Security Council to show the world and Syria that Syria remains a priority. Now, what we could see happening over the next few days is a stronger push from the UN Syria envoy Staffan de Mistura for weekly 48-hour pauses in fighting to allow humanitarian aid to be delivered. But the fact that this has been so difficult to accomplish speaks to how complicated conditions are on the ground and how a political solution remains so far out of reach.
Li-Ling Tan, thank you for that. At the UN.